You're watching Behind the Headlines. I'm Pacchia. It's springtime, and for lawyers, that means the annual release of the AmLaw 100 rankings. To find out which law firms are rising and which are falling, we're talking with Robin Sparkman. She's the editor-in-chief of The American Lawyer. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So overall, at the top 100 firms, gross revenue increased 3%. Revenue per lawyer rose almost the same amount, and profits per partner, of course, were up 4%. Your coverage describes 2012 as a year of fundamental recovery. Let's break that statement down. What exactly do you mean?
Well, what we mean is that all of the key metrics were up, as you said, gross revenue, revenue per lawyer, profits, so that's a very good sign. At the same time, we did not see any sort of retrenchment in terms of headcount, so that's also a fundamentally good sign.
So big law, in terms of a recession, it's bottomed out? It's going to get better from here on in?
Well, big law is obviously integrally tied to the global economy. So as long as the global economy continues to do well, big law will continue to do well.
Your story notes very different results for the top half and bottom half of your rankings. The top half saw profits increase 8%, a rather healthy amount, while the bottom half saw profits drop more than 3%. What explains those results?
Right. The top firms in the AmLaw 100, the firms ranked 1 through 50, they do a much better job of keeping the lid on their expenses on one side, and they also do a better job in terms of the practice mix. They have the more high-end practice work. So those are the firms that are doing more of the M&A work, more of the capital markets work, and the lower tier firms in the AmLaw 100 just don't have a piece of that.
When we look at profits per partner, we saw some really big moves. Moving on the upside, we saw Bracewell, Kilpatrick Townsend, O'Melveny Myers, Louis Brisbois, and Blank Rome. Bracewell led the pack with 42% in gains. Why were they up so much?
Well, Bracewell had a spectacular year. This is a Texas-based firm. It's one that Mayor Giuliani joined a few years ago, gave his name to the firm, and that they are largely in the energy industry. And they had a great year because they had so much work from their core clients in the energy field, and they were also able to channel work to their other offices outside of Texas. So their Washington office, for example, did a lot of energy regulatory work. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that word up. I mean, that is the buzzword for big law for 2012, in my opinion. When we saw all of these M&A deals involving law firms, always when we talk to our sources, it came down to, well, they have a prestigious energy practice. When we look at firms other than Bracewell, how did firms with traditionally well-known energy practices do? Did it bear out throughout the whole 100?
It did. I mean, generally, firms in that sector, they got a boost as well. Firms in Canada that also do a lot of energy work, they get a boost too. However, that market is becoming very, very concentrated. We've seen a lot of firms go into Houston in the last few years. Not everyone will succeed. It's an extremely competitive and interesting market to watch.
Okay, let's turn to firms that slipped most in profits per partner. We had some big names here: Fried Frank, Shook Hardy, Patton Boggs, Baker & McKenzie, Aiken, and Weil Gotshal. What happened here?
Well, that is a little more firm specific in terms of the firms that had a tough year. With Shook Hardy, they lost a few key partners to another firm. Other firms, they did not have the transactional boost. For a lot of firms, the first part of the year, especially the first quarter, was very, very challenging. And firms, as a rule, had a very good fourth quarter of the year. And some of the firms you mentioned, they really struggled in terms of being able to eke out profits simply because they just had a good fourth quarter.
It was another down year for Chadbourne & Park, with profits off 6%. The firm actually fell out of the top 100 for the first time in a while. In your view, is Chadbourne long for this world?
Oh, I mean, what the managing partner of Chadbourne said to our reporter is that they had a very difficult year, and that at the end of the year, things got better for them in terms of disputes and insolvency matters, and that those results will be reflected in 2013. I think it's very early to say anything that dire about Chadbourne. They've also they've had a lot of churn, and they brought in some new people, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Now, Robin, putting a survey like this together over the course of a year just has to be a gargantuan task. But last year, you had to revise 2 years of Dewey and LaBeouf numbers when it became apparent that their numbers weren't nearly as good as they had reported. What are you doing differently this year to guard against firms fudging their numbers?
Well, I think, and I'm sure that anyone in the big law firm world will agree with me, that Dewey and LaBeouf is extremely sort of anomalous situation in terms of their how much they misled their partners and their clients and their employees within the firm. But for us, as a rule, we are doing extremely stringent vetting of the firms in terms of firms, the numbers that they give us, in terms of talking with people who've recently left the firm, in terms of comparing firms to comparable firms within that particular market to see if those numbers make sense.
If last year was a fundamental recovery, how much do you expect revenues and profits to be up, if at all, in 2013?
Mm-hmm. Well, something's comparable to what we saw in 2012, and perhaps slightly greater. Again, it's only early in 2013, so it's a little hard to see. What I am hearing on the street from a lot of firms is that the first quarter of the year was very slow in terms of transactional work, and until that gets better, we won't see any significant jumps in terms of profits and in terms of gross revenue.
Robin, thanks so much for stopping by today.
Great, my pleasure.
That's Robin Sparkman, Editor-in-Chief of The American Lawyer. If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and of course you can follow our updates on Twitter. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.